Palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware routinely used to ask her patients, who were in the last 12 weeks of their life, about any regrets they had or anything they would do differently. Based on those conversations, she identified the top regrets of the dying. They include, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so much. And I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Bronnie wrote in her book about the exceptional clarity of vision that people would achieve at the end of their lives. We can learn an awful lot from the regrets of the dying, but also from the regrets people express earlier in their lives. Life is too short to live with regrets. I think that's a positive attitude to have. We can spend far too much time dwelling on past decisions at the expense of planning for a more productive future right now. When it comes to our money, though, I think it's healthy to reflect on regrets from time to time, and especially to learn a lot from the financial regrets of others. Some new research published by the investment broker Hargreaves Lansdown has identified the most common financial regret as being not saving sooner for emergencies. In this video, I want to take a look at the findings from this survey so we can take steps to help us avoid making the same financial mistakes and ultimately living with the same financial regrets as so many others. Hi everyone, I'm Martin Bamford, a chartered financial planner, personal finance YouTuber and money author. On this channel, I talk about personal finance, investing and happiness. I make these videos to help you become wealthier and happier. If that sounds like a great result, click on that little red subscribe button, become part of our subscriber community. It's completely free and you'll never miss an episode. This new research from Hargreaves Lansdown is rather fascinating. I think that we can learn an awful lot from these findings. They found that the most common financial regret, as I mentioned in the introduction, is not saving sooner for emergencies. 1 in 5 people, 20%, regret leaving it too late to build up an emergency fund for a rainy day. However, in a close second place is a financial regret of not saving early enough for retirement. So we're going to take a look at both of those regrets in this video and explain what you can do about them so you don't live with the same regrets in the future. The research also found there is a difference between men and women when it comes to their financial regrets. Women were more likely than men to regret the amount of time it took for them to start saving for a cash emergency fund. And men were more likely than women to regret not having started saving into a pension sooner. It might well be the reason for that discrepancy between the regrets of men and women is because women typically take more responsibility for household budgeting and day-to-day expenditure, and that makes the presence of a cash emergency fund a much bigger priority for women. Men, on the other hand, tend to take more of a role in long-term investment and retirement planning. So this could be a case of having financial regrets about our main areas of financial responsibility. Of course, it's not that case in every household, in every relationship. It's not the case that men take responsibility for the long term and women for the short term. It's just an average, and it's certainly in my experience as a financial planner, that tends to be the typical allocation of financial roles. But do let me know in the comments below if that's how it works in your relationship, in your household. I know everyone's different. Everyone has a different approach to this. Other regrets include not tackling debt. Around 1 in 10 people said they wish they got to grips with their debts sooner. And a similar number of respondents said that they wish they'd learned about money and started budgeting and started investing money sooner. Our financial regrets appear to change with our age. Older respondents to this survey, so people aged 55 and older, were most likely to regret not having started their pension sooner. And that financial regret for the over 55s is very likely because they're approaching the time when they're going to be reliant on their pension savings to fund their lifestyle in retirement. But there was also a common regret of not starting a pension sooner for younger people, people between ages of 18 and 34. They said they were most likely to regret not having started a pension, but also they regret not having started a cash emergency fund. That younger age group, the 18 to 34-year-olds, also the group most likely to say that they wish they had started investing money sooner. For the respondents who fall into my age category, I think I'm more or less bang in the middle of this one, the 35 to 54-year-olds, one of the most common regrets was wishing that they'd got to grips with their debts earlier on in life. And the research suggests that might be because they've got multiple demands on their income, often having children to support. So there's a regret associated with having to repay debts at the same time. Sarah Coles, who's a personal finance analyst at Hargreaves Lansdown, said, "Most of us have regrets lurking somewhere in our financial past, but we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves because an awful lot of people have plenty to feel proud of too. The most common things we regret include those we might have to put off because we didn't think we had the cash, like saving for a rainy day or starting a pension. However, we also regret the things we chose not to get to grips with, which didn't require any extra money, like living on a budget or getting our heads around debt. But we shouldn't be too busy beating ourselves up over our shortcomings to celebrate our successes. 1 in 5 people got started with a pension at an early age. The same proportion avoided the temptation to borrow too much money. And the same number again worked hard to get onto the property ladder as young as possible." So just to run through that top 10 list of financial regrets, 20% said their biggest financial regret was saving, not saving for a rainy day. In second place, not saving early enough for retirement. That was 19% of respondents. In joint third place with 12% was investing or getting to grips with debt. And then in fifth place with 11% was failing to budget. In sixth place, at 10% of respondents, learning about money, followed by prioritising buying a house in seventh place with 9%. And then in eighth place, getting an ISA, an individual savings account, with 7% of people saying that was a regret. In ninth place, saving for children, with 5% saying that was a financial regret, followed by in 10th place, fixing a savings rate, with 4% of the respondents. On the flip side, the survey also identified the top 10 things that people are grateful to have made an early start on. In joint first place, with 20% of responses each, was not getting into debts and buying a house as early as possible. Those were followed by starting a pension young in third place, with 19% of responses. And in fourth place, setting up regular savings, with 16%. In fifth place, keeping enough cash for emergencies. 12% of the survey respondents listed that one as something they were grateful of making an early start on. And then in joint sixth place was learning about money matters and working a budget. Both were 10% of respondents. In eighth place, managing to save money when money was tight. 9% of people said that one. And in joint ninth place, setting up regular investments and getting out of debt. In both cases, 8% of respondents listed those things. I think both of those lists, those top 10 financial steps that people regret not taking until later in life, and the top 10 things that people are grateful to have made an early start on, these were incredibly informative. You can use them as a bit of a checklist to go through and think, have I tackled those in my own financial life? There's some overarching themes here, and these do form the basis, the foundation for good, sound financial planning. Having a cash emergency fund is something that I bang on about all the time as a financial planner. This is easily accessible cash that can cover your expenses on a rainy day when things have gone wrong. The old rule of thumb suggested that you should have the equivalent of 3 months' worth of your committed expenditure. The equivalent of that is a cash savings for emergencies. I always advocate for having more cash than that, anywhere between, say, 6 and 12 months worth of your committed expenditure as an equivalent. And I think the pandemic, this experience we've been through in the pandemic in the last year or so, has taught us that more is better when it comes to cash emergency savings. The economic impacts of the pandemic since last March have been a classic example of a rainy day when having that ability to dip into your emergency fund can make the difference between continuing to live your life how you want and having to rely on state support or borrowing money from friends and family. Another common theme in this survey is getting to grip with debts, and keeping your debt under control is another foundational element of sound financial planning. We know that debt is a drag on our ability to meet our longer term financial objectives. If too much of your money is going out of the door each month towards the cost of servicing your debt, that is going to slow down your progress towards your longer term goals. And of course, if your circumstances change and debt suddenly becomes unaffordable, unmanageable, that's when debt, ordinary run-of-the-mill debt, becomes problem debt. And that can lead to all sorts of devastating financial consequences, up to and including bankruptcy. Retirement planning is another one that was commonly identified here. It was the second biggest financial step that people regret not taking into later life. And it was the third thing that people are grateful to have made an early start on. We're not great as a nation at prioritising retirement planning. I think that's because we view retirement as something that's always a very long way in the future. It's not until we get to our 50s and 60s that it becomes very real, very tangible, tangible, something we actually have to worry about. One of the most powerful factors behind effective retirement planning is time. The earlier you start saving for your retirement, the easier it is to do. And that's because we get the benefit of compounded investment returns. Put simply, investment returns on top of investment returns on top of investment returns. If you're able to start at a young age, putting money away into a pension each and every month, that money has far longer to accumulate, to grow. Starting earlier reduces the total amount of money that you need to put into your pension pot to save up sufficient amounts to support your retirement income. There's another common theme in this list, and that's budgeting. It was the fifth biggest regret, and it's a joint sixth thing that people are grateful to have made an early start on. If you can get your budgeting right, if you can ensure that each and every month you've got more money coming in than you have going out, and if you can automate your main expenses each month, including paying yourself first, so putting money away into savings and allocating money to investments and your retirement planning for the future, that will put you on an excellent track for the future. This stuff is not rocket science. I think when it comes to financial planning, when it comes to investing money, there's a tendency to try and run before we can walk. We get so easily distracted by the exciting, sexy, shiny elements of financial planning, whether that's day trading stocks or Forex or cryptocurrency, for example. But that stuff is both unnecessary, and for the majority of investors, it's entirely irrelevant. We would all be in so much more of a better financial position, much better financial shape, if we just stuck to the basics, if we got these basic elements of financial planning right in the first place. Budgeting, staying out of debt, establishing a sizable cash emergency fund, saving and investing our money for the future, including within our pension funds for our retirement. Something that wasn't flagged up in this survey was protection. And while it's essential to ensure that we have a cash savings emergency fund for a rainy day, it is equally important to make sure that we have financial protection in place should we experience a disaster. The big one, of course, is what happens if we die? What happens to our families in a financial sense if we pass away? That risk from a financial perspective is incredibly simple and very cheap to insure against. We can put in place a suitable amount of life insurance, and should we die unexpectedly, our families then continue to be supported. Other types of financial protection we need to think about include protecting our incomes. If we're unable to work due to an accident or severe illness, then income replacement insurance can step in, it can fill any gaps. And we need to think about the negative financial consequences of contracting a critical illness, whether that's a heart attack or cancer or a stroke. Critical illness cover, again, is a very affordable, it's a very simple way to insure against that particular financial risk. Well done to Hargreaves Lansdown for carrying out this research, for highlighting these common financial regrets, and at the same time for sharing the things that people are grateful to have made a start on early in their financial lives. It's so important we talk about this stuff. It's not spoken about enough. What are your biggest financial regrets in life, and what are you most grateful for having made an early start on? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. Until next time, I'm Martin Bamford, and remember, when it comes to your money, the more you know, the faster it can grow.